G'day everyone, here's another video for sound design for new media. This one is on the semantics of product sounds. Okay, so by the end of this video you should be able to understand or interpret, analyze how sound as an ambiguous medium impacts sociocultural perceptions. Alright, so what is semantics? Semantics is kind of the idea, the concept, the investigation that is about whether we all mean the same thing when we use any kind of conceptual representation or communicative pattern. So this might be through language, through programming, could also be through sound. So semantics is simply the idea that we actually have a shared meaning about what we mean when we speak or use a communicative pattern, and we can actually kind of talk about what we think we mean when we say something, and this presents itself really clearly in sound because sound doesn't always mean the same thing to everyone. And in that way, sound is a more ambiguous medium, say, than the visual domain. And so as sound designers, we have to actually take that into account. So semantics fits kind of firmly into the psychology of sound design, and it is a consideration for interaction designers across modalities, using visual and sonic and physical, all of the different kinds of ways of experiencing something. But for us as sound designers, investigating exactly semantic meaning and articulating ourselves in terms of what our intentions are when it comes to describing a sound, but also coming up with a shared meaning between us and users, is a really important component of doing sound design well. And so let's just dive into some really tangible examples of semantic meaning. So here's the first one. So some of you might have heard of this kind of great contention that now exists in automotive design. Cars have effectively been designed, they've been engineered in such a way that they no longer produce the kinds of sonic effects like the Harley Davidson. So when driving in a car, driver comfort has been prioritized, and sound dampening, the minimization of vibration, has been extensively utilized through engineering processes to create much quieter driving experiences. But one of the things that this has done is, broadly made driving more of a comfortable experience. But for those people, in particular drivers of vehicles, high performance vehicles or vehicles with lots of power behind them, they lost their sonic association with the engine sound. They actually minimized the experience of having a powerful engine by making the cabin quieter. And so what car manufacturers, instead of going back on what they've done in terms of dampening and engineering, because these are great advances in comfort, they've actually modified the experience of driving by piping engine noise back into the cabin artificially. And this kind of process of rearticulating sound that was formerly there because of the engineering advancements is a kind of a great example of the kind of obtuse sound design problems that are produced, and how semantic meaning actually really impacts the way that sound designers have to think about problems. So what I mean by that is that the people who kind of, when this was discovered, people were really upset. They really thought that this was them being cheated, and I think it's a fascinating problem because what was their complaint? Their complaint wasn't that the car isn't powerful. The car was powerful. Their complaint wasn't that the cabin couldn't be quiet. Their complaint was in fact that the authenticity of the sound wasn't real. So whilst the outcome of the actual vehicle was the same, it was a powerful car, and the internal comfort of the vehicle, in the sense that it's now quieter, was also a positive benefit, they still thought the authenticity of the sounds, the consequential effect of those sounds, was upsetting. And I think we all kind of get it. It's an intuitive kind of thing. Fake car sounds seem inauthentic, and so why would we want them? And I think this really illustrates well the semantic meaning of sounds, as in how it can be associated with things like authenticity and other aspects of experience, actually have to drive decision making around sound design. And this is, again, just to cut back to that initial point, that interaction designers are focused on the experience of products and services. And perhaps considering the experience of authenticity as a component of designing sounds for vehicles is very necessary. So I can think of another example of this, and it's in the performative domain, and that's Autotune. And this is kind of not so much anymore. People kind of use Autotune in a different way that they once were, but we all love these stories of popular singers whose Autotune turns off or something like that, or there's a recording of them without the Autotune turned on, and we kind of feel like we've exposed them for the kind of the fraud that they are, that they actually aren't as good at performing as they otherwise would be if they weren't using this Autotune process. And so, again, we have another great example of how authenticity really matters to the overall experience of a creative artifact in this instance. And so, authenticity and trust and these kind of value perceptions, these kinds of notions of the overall quality of a sound, actually have huge impact on the saleability, the viability of products, experiences, and otherwise. And so, as sound designers, we can't even begin to approach these problems without first considering the experience of the user. Lots of different representations of the associations of product sounds exist out there, kind of perceptual processes, etc. But here's one that kind of like broadly examines 3 dimensions of semantic meaning in sound. So we have perceptual processes, cognitive responses, and emotional responses. And if we kind of break down our response to these kinds of examples into these 3 components, I think it could be kind of useful. So perceptual processes are those ones which are actually about our initial perception of a sound, its shape and quality, things like the roughness, our attention towards it, the smoothness of the sound. And emotional responses are things like unpleasantness or pleasantness. And then cognitive responses are those which are more about size and power. And each dimension, emotional, cognitive, and perceptual, they kind of take on a different role in creating a sound, creating the overall quality of a sound. And so this might be one way that we can begin to start thinking intentionally about how to create product sounds that satiate both the desirable outcomes of the user, but also meet the needs in terms of communicating feedback and intentionality. All right, so with that, this video, in summary, experience comes first. Fake engine sounds, hugely problematic. And I think we should discuss that a little bit further. So thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.